The NIH was once the crown jewel of American science, but during COVID, it became a political weapon. Unelected bureaucrats like Anthony Fauci pushed school closures, mask mandates, and vaccine promises that never held up. And millions of families suffered the consequences. The damage to the public trust was enormous. Now under President Trump, the NIH has new leadership. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, one of the few who got COVID right from the start. He's setting the agency's priorities straight. He's shutting down unsafe labs, pulling politics out of research, and driving resources towards what actually matters, uncovering the causes of autism, curing sickle cell anemia, and using AI to transform medicine. The goal is simple: an NIH that serves patients, not politicians. I sat down with Dr. Bhattacharya to hear how he's turning the nation's top research institution into a cornerstone of the MAHA mission. Well, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, I know you want the gold standard in science here at the NIH. So tell me about all of it, how it's been to come in here, what you found, and what you're doing to kind of propel things in the right direction.
I think a lot of people lost trust in the NIH and in science, actually, because what happened during the pandemic was so terrible for so many people. The schools closed, people were forced to wear masks when it didn't seem to make any difference. And then, of course, the vaccines didn't stop you from getting and spreading COVID. And the NIH, I have to say, sad to say, was associated with a lot of those policies. You know, Tony Fauci's name, people associate that primarily with the NIH. But there's much more to it than just Tony Fauci. It's an amazing institution that has 100+ year history of developing cures and treatments for the most intractable diseases. A lot of what medicine is today is because of the history of the NIH. And it's just an absolute honor to be able to, run the place.
Something that you are focused on in particular is sort of reestablishing public trust in vaccines and looking at maybe doing vaccines a little bit differently. Can you explain what your goals are with vaccines?
Vaccines are really an important technology for preventing infectious diseases. I mean, there's a lot of great history of vaccines being used to, for instance, we got rid of smallpox, probably the biggest killer in all of history. Same time, people were told that the vaccines that were being used were going to stop you from getting and spreading COVID. People lost their jobs over this. And the point is that vaccines are not a magic. Do a risk-based assessment on who should get it, who shouldn't get it. That's really the main thing we're trying to do. There's some great new technologies, like potentially we've been working on a vaccine to get rid of, to have like one shot and you're never going to get the flu again. We'll have to test it, see if it still works. But I mean, that kind of thing is pretty exciting.
You were very outspoken during COVID about the fact that, unless you were of a population that had maybe a comorbidity or people who were very vulnerable, life should have gone on as normal. That was a big thing to come out back then and talk about. And I know that you probably took a lot of heat for it.
I mean, it was a tough moment, right? Because everyone was so scared, and because they were scared, they looked to scientific figures, again, Tony Fauci, for instance, who told them, look, all you need to do is listen to me and you'll be safe. And the kinds of ideas that came out of it were often quite destructive. And I could see the harm to the kids. I could see there were all these reports about the economic catastrophe caused by the lockdowns to the poorest people of the world. And I also saw that the disease wasn't that deadly to children, whereas for older people it was much more. So I wrote this thing called the Great Barrington Declaration in October 2020. I thought it was the most obvious thing in the world, right? Protect older people better, let kids be kids. And that led to all kinds of like death threats. The former head of the NIH wrote to Tony Fauci calling for a devastating takedown of me. So it was a really crazy moment.
How is what you are doing here at the NIH helping to send America down this Make America Healthy Again path?
If you're going to make America healthy, you have to have excellent research so that the things we adopt are likely to work, right? So I'll give you an example, right? So we're focused. Secretary Kennedy asked me, and President Trump has asked me to try to figure out what is the cause of autism. We've started a program that will launch in September, where hundreds and hundreds of scientists across the country applied in order to get a competitive process, and we're going to award a dozen amazing research teams that are going to be focused on what the cause of autism is. We're going to look at new potential treatments. I think by the end of this year, we'll know so much more. And I'm just filled with hope.
Early on in your time as director, I know that you had to shut down an NIH lab in Maryland because of a serious incident involving biosafety. Give us the story on this lab and why that was necessary.
That was so poorly reported. Okay, and it actually quite frustrating. So here's what happened. There was just a whole set of reports suggesting to me that the safety culture of this lab was not very good. And if I'm going to run a high security lab where deadly pathogens are investigated, you can't have a safety culture like that. So I ordered the lab to shut down, and now we're going to reopen it under a new management, essentially bringing it with the folks who like traditionally work at the NIH rather than a contractor that was, in my view, just failed.
So the NIH recently launched a 5-year research study to address the long-term health effects from the 2023 East Palestine, Ohio train derailment. Tell me what you're looking for overall there and how this study overall could help health in general here in the country.
That train derailment actually exposed a lot of the folks who live in East Palestine, Ohio to a lot of toxic chemicals. And Vice President Vance, when he was a senator, had tried to get the Biden administration to actually do a research project on it. He asked the NIH to study it when he became vice president. What I hope to learn from that is what impact do these toxic chemicals have on the health of the local citizens, and also how can you mitigate the harm from it so that people don't have to spend their lives worried about being sick from that kind of exposure.
There have been some federal funding cuts to things like vaccine research and grants tied to DEI and LGBTQ studies, and you say these cuts are part of a larger plan to restore the public trust in medical research. So what's your plan with restoring trust in research? I mean, we're talking overall about getting Americans to feel good about the NIH again.
I'm a big supporter of research that advances the health and improves the health of minority communities. So I just talked to a researcher here who's working on a way to cure sickle cell anemia. It's a deadly disease that affects a lot of African American kids. That's real advancement in minority health, right? Or for the LGBT community, I know in 2019, President Trump committed the country to eradicating HIV or reducing HIV transmission near zero within a decade. And that will do more good for the LGBT community than any other politicized research. I think the key thing is the NIH is for everybody. And if you take the politics out and you focus on health, you're going to do better for everybody.
Where do you foresee maybe the most progress being made overall for our society, as it relates to medicine and just making America healthy?
We just have to get politics out of research in medicine, just focus on the key things that matter. Like, why have we had no increase in life expectancy the last decade? It's this, we've seen big advances in technology, but they haven't translated over to actually answering the most important questions in people's lives. That to me is the most important thing. Like, how do we take the advances that we should continue to have and then translate them over to address the key health needs of the country?
What do you think, just to wrap us up, is the one thing that you hope when you leave this position? Where do you hope we are with the NIH, with America and our health system, healthy Americans overall? What's your hope?
The NIH is, in my view, the engine for making America healthy again. And actually, it's you talk about the budget, right? One of the biggest parts of the budget is spending on Medicare and Medicaid, all this money on making people, essentially treating their illnesses. But what if the research that we do at the NIH over the next however many years I'm here leads to actually making America healthy? You spend less on Medicare, less on Medicaid. What you do is you turn around both the economic fortunes of the country and the health fortunes of the country, and it's the key to the American future, I think.